and they're adding on to their home or building on a vacant lot, the standard basically is, I'll read it, under the small lot review. A building permit can issue unless the zoning administrator determines that the proposed dwelling appears not to be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. And the standard is to review the proposed dwelling's compatibility with and impact on the surrounding neighborhood in terms of its location, size, height, and design. Very ambiguous. I can tell you, there's a lot of ambiguity. It does not protect views. And it only applies for small lots. We can have planning look into this and determine how many of the lots in East Richmond and North Arlington are small lots and how many are standard size lots. We can get that information. So this is what the standard was in Kensington prior to about 15 years ago, when in Kensington, people were concerned that there was going to be a lot of room additions, adding on to homes, height that would block a neighbor's view. And the small lot review did not apply to every lot in Kensington and didn't protect views. So we went through a process with Kensington and developed an ordinance. And I'll just summarize it. The ordinance applies to all lots in Kensington, not just the small lots. And it's and the standard is much different. I'll just read it. To ensure that development will promote the values, the ordinance, the zoning administrator shall evaluate siting, size, bulk, building envelope, height, setbacks, relative scale, off-street parking spaces, window placement, artificial lighting, location of mechanical devices such as motors, fans, and vents. These features of the development shall be evaluated on the basis of their impacts on the neighboring properties with regard to view protection, obstructions, privacy in living areas, parking, light and solar access, maintaining residential noise levels, and compatibility with the neighborhood with regard to bulk and scale. And it's things like the goal is to minimize impacts on surrounding neighbors, protect the value and enjoyment of neighbors' property. So it's to be a balance. And so the question really for all of you, without going, and we could get more information if you decide to look at this, is whether East Richmond wants to take a look at having such an ordinance for your area. The county is in the middle of redoing its general plan for the first time in decades. If you decide to do it, two things would happen. The county would amend its general plan for East Richmond and North Arlington during this general plan process to put these policies in. And then the Board of Supervisors would adopt the Kensington Ordinance and apply it to your area. So that is, and now if I go back and forth to this Pinole meeting, I know this meeting's being recorded and James will take notes, but that's the question. And I know you may want to, if you want to look at this, we'll get you more information. You'll have the ordinance, but you would want to maybe set up a work group. There are some residents who may want to say some words about why they're interested in this. And we can have more discussion. So that's really the issue, is whether you want to go from having all room additions where you change. This does not, by the way, this is different than if you're building a second unit. If you're building a second unit under what's called the accessory dwelling unit ordinance, that's under a different, there's a countywide ordinance on that. This is if someone's adding onto their house, doing a room addition, or building on a vacant lot. So with that, it's really open for your discussion. I'll answer questions as long as I stay on here before going to this other meeting. You'll still see me even when I go to the other meeting, because I'm looking at a different screen, but I'll come back if need be.
I have a question. I went online and I probably pulled up wrong ordinances, but I found an ordinance on tree obstruction of
No,
views.
that's a tree. So it's the Kensington Combining District Ordinance, which is 84, which is Article 80, which is 84-74.2.
Okay, I have that one also.
Combining District Ordinance, whereas the other is the small lot review.
Okay. So do we have any questions? Do we have any discussion from the board? Or any speakers?
I mean, I would just love to ask you, John, what are the advantages and disadvantages? I mean, without asking you to talk.
Yeah, sure. I think one is a balance. I mean, if you are building a room addition, you probably want less restrictions on what you do. But if you are a neighbor, you want to be protected from potentially impacts of a neighbor's property. I think the biggest thing it's done is allowed all properties to undergo a review if a neighbor, after a public notice, the neighbor asks for a review. And there was in Kensington, the need arose because, if you think about it, it's on a sharp slope. Almost every home that built up potentially impacted the house behind it. That is the case maybe in some areas of East Richmond and North Arlington, but not all. So that's the issue is the major advantage the Kensington residents saw, at least many of them, was their protection of their view or access to light, so someone wasn't blocking out light into their home.
Did this arise from a specific situation in our area? Or
It arose just because a lot of homes were being purchased in Kensington that are small, older, and people were adding on to their homes. So there was just concern about monster homes.
And this would not protect from commercial properties. We do have some commercial areas.
In Kensington, there are now policies in the general plan to protect residents from the views of commercial. The ordinance doesn't apply, but there are general plan policies now. Kensington probably has more commercial than you have because they have the Calusa Circle and Arlington areas. Mm-hmm. So any commercial development would potentially has to be looked at also in a slightly different way to protect, so it doesn't. You have to consider impact on views.
Okay. Is there any other discussion from the members of the council? Any other comments? Are there any other?
I don't know if any of the residents on North Arlington just want to raise an issue. So if you what you could decide to do is create a work group, and maybe that makes the most sense. That can sort of take a look, a deeper dive at this. We get more information, and because really we wouldn't want to do it unless there is some community interest in doing so, right? We want to see what does that mean? We can do a community survey, a critical mass. We would summarize what this would involve, but that may be the best thing is if you want to consider set up a work group.
Okay, and I have a question. There's 5 members on our board, on our council currently. So in order to not have a majority under the Brown Act, our work group would have to be 2 members.
That's right.
Okay.
And you can have residents from the community work, coming to those or working if you want.
So Joanne, we do have a question. Joanna Pace, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, I actually have 2 questions. Could someone clarify what you're referring to when you say North Arlington? And then the other question I have is, when I put this in the issue of the neighborhood newsletter that we wrote that said it was going to be on the agenda, I just assumed it was going to be about trees growing up
Oh,
and blocking people's view.
Sorry, yeah, no, it's not about, there's a separate tree ordinance. That's separate, right?
Okay.
Yes.
Does that tree ordinance apply to us?
Tree ordinance
It's a
applies
county tree ordinance.
everywhere in the county, but it's
Okay.
it's enforced civilly through the courts. It works very differently. North Arlington is the area on the other side of north of McBride, you know, up in the hill there, north of McBride, above the elementary school.
Okay, thank you.
So I included the link to the East Richmond Heights MAC homepage. On the homepage, there's a map of the boundaries for the MAC. And in the top left corner, you'll see an area that says Alpine Road, North Arlington Boulevard.
That area.
Oh, okay, good. Thank you.
We do have some residents, Barbara, Jason, that came to Supervisor Joy and I with this. If you'd like to lend something to that, Barbara?
Sure, there's three of us. Steve Rusin is also on this, on the call. So we were initially concerned about it because there's some parcels that are off of North Arlington, Alpine North Arlington area, that we didn't know how those were actually going to be zoned. And so there's obviously issues with traffic, and there's also issues with views. And this parcel of land, it might, I have to look at the map, but it might actually be right next to Wildcat. Like it might be in between North Arlington and Wildcat Canyon. So it does affect the East Richmond Heights a bit. And we're just right over this little valley here from you all. So if there's an issue that someone is going to build, we want to keep our views. We're on the hill here. So I don't know, Jason or Steve, do you want to say anything more about it?
No, I think that about covers it. I think we just like to figure out what can be built, not just for views, but even in terms of land integrity and the closeness to Wildcat Canyon. And because we're specifically on a 2-lane road that's really narrow, with some pretty off drainage, just adding additional residents, if it's multiple residents, not like single family homes, but adding additional residents like condominiums or anything like that, we kind of want to know and possibly be able to say no or have some say in terms of how it affects the neighborhood in general.
And we're looking into Jason, the details about that vacant land, and we'll get back to you about that. So we will look into that.
I saw Elizabeth and Eleanor. Eleanor, do you have a question? Blake?
In my particular part of East Richmond Heights, view ordinance is also of interest. We're in a similar part of the neighborhood as Kensington geographically. And separately, if the ADU ordinance is somehow separate, it too could present issues as to views. And so I noticed John separated that out, but I'd like to know how the two would go together.
Right.
And then lastly, if a general plan is being developed, I think that would be very important for the MAC to be kept apprised of as our neighborhood comes under that plan.
Right. And to note on the ADU, under state law, every city and county had to develop, under some guidelines of state law, a process to approve ADUs or second units over the counter without discretionary review if they met certain quantitative requirements. So that ordinance was dictated by state law. So I forgot what the threshold is, and we can get that. If an ADU or second unit is under a certain square footage, there is no review at all. If it's above a certain square footage, then then in Kensington, it's subject to some modification of the view ordinance. In other words, the view ordinance actually can apply with some modifications if it's a second unit above so many square feet. But it's important to note, the state law said some second units under a certain square foot have to be approved administratively to approve more housing, to increase the housing stock. So the answer would be some ADUs would be could be subject to this view type ordinance. Smaller ones would not.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, thank you. I'm surprised to find out that we don't have one, because I know over the years I've received notices for modifications at houses way down the street from me, 2 streets above me, things that couldn't possibly impact my view. And I don't even know why I got the notices. So I'm surprised that it's not going on. But East Richmond Heights did have one rather nasty view problem several years ago down Arlington, if you remember. And it just strikes me that it would be a good idea to, since we have a MAC, to kind of give that people might like to know that there is some order in the universe, that people are thinking about this, and there is a way to deal with these problems. So I think it'd be worth having a working group and exploring what people would like.
Let me just add that, there's a requirement for anytime anyone is trying to get a variance to their property for an addition, I believe it's state law that requires notification to any residents within 300 feet of that proposal. So that's why you're getting it. It's not about you. It's just about somebody requesting a variance to the zoning ordinance.
Yeah, and the Kensington Ordinance, Kensington is the only unincorporated in the area in the county that has the ability to look at impacts on views, access to light and air. And I don't even know if any others, when we looked at research, I'm not even sure if any other cities in Contra Costa had an ordinance like this. Orinda may have had something, but we did a lot of research and crafted an ordinance that I think was pretty well thought out. And if you decide to form a work group to do this, we'd have more discussion about that. Let me say, if there was a decision to go forward with this in either North Arlington or East Richmond, we would highly recommend using the Kensington Ordinance. Our planning department doesn't want to have a second set of requirements to look at. They would want to use basically the same values, standards, and process as in the Kensington Ordinance. The other thing that Kensington has that you don't have, they have a full-time, I say full-time, they have a MAC that just deals with planning issues that meets every month. So a lot of the applications, they all go through the MAC. They meet monthly. They're very involved. This is all they do.
Okay. Are there any other speakers, James?
No one no one's waving at me, so I don't think there's anyone else with a comment for the views ordinance. If someone does, you can press the button to raise your hand. You can wave at me. If you're on the phone, I have unmuted the persons that are on. If someone would like to speak about the views ordinance.
If there's no other speakers, we can stop if there's another speaker, but I'd like to bring it back to the MAC for discussion and ask the MAC if they would be interested in looking at a view ordinance, and if they would be, secondly, if they'd be interested in forming a work group to do so.
Well, it seems clear to me that people are interested in this happening, and we've got a great existing ordinance, so that could be part of the charge, right, of the working group. So it seems clear that this is, I can't see there's nothing coming from the meeting suggesting that we shouldn't, right? So it just seems like we should. So we just need.
Okay. And then I guess the next question, there could be 2 members from the MAC on the work group, and then would you want to include one representative from the neighborhood? I don't know if anybody is interested in being on from the neighborhood.
Victoria, I see your hands up. Is that yes to being on the working group? So Victoria will be on the working group. Do we have another MAC member that would like to participate in the working group?
I would.
And Joanne. Okay. I will work with the two of you to set up the meetings. And Bara, we will include you as our resident contact. These meetings would be public though, so folks would be invited to participate in them, but we do need a bit of a council. So I've got the...
And I'll participate in them with the information, so I'll be involved with it. And the timing would have to be you'd have to decide over the next really few months, because if you want to get it in the general plan, that's, that would be the time frame.
I will send out dates for the first working group meeting tomorrow morning.
That'll be a Zoom meeting, is that correct?
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes, it will be a Zoom meeting.
Okay.
James, you can put Steve Rusin on as well.
Got it.
And then
I'm gonna
also,
switch
if
to the
you would,
Pinole meeting, and I'll come back, but I have to so I'm glad we were able to cover this, and you cover the other. I need to switch to this Pinole City Council meeting.
okay, thank you. And James, when you set up the meeting, are you gonna inquire of people to see what times work, or evenings, or?
Oh yeah, I will definitely
trying to get a range.
I will definitely do that, because at least for the first meeting, we will Supervisor Joy will be at. So that may be the one challenge. My schedule is pretty flexible. I can meet whenever, but his schedule is pretty impacted. So it may take a little doing for the first meeting, but after that, any subsequent meetings, we can meet mornings whenever, hopefully not on the weekends, but we could do that as well. But yeah, but I will send out a range of dates tomorrow. Once I've had a chance to look at his calendar and see where he's got 30, 45 minutes, something like that, I'll send that out.
Okay. You also attach a link to the ordinance we're going to be looking at?
Yes.
For everybody, thank you. Okay. So next on the agenda, we'll go back to presentations. Presentation 2 is by the Sheriff's Office, Station Commander Lieutenant Joseph Buford.
Well, hello, good evening, everyone. MAC board and members of East Richmond Heights and North Arlington area. Let me say, when we look at that map, whether you are North Arlington area and the East Richmond Heights area, as far as the ASO is concerned, is one beat. You guys are all what we consider beat 4 in that area. So whether they separate out to El Sobrani, it's not going to be a different deputy when it's involved up that way. Although we consider that whole area East Richmond Heights. So with that being said, I'll move on to September's calls for service. We only got 54 calls for service up there over the month of September. If you do the math, that's less than 2 calls a day. No complaints came into my office. Nothing real violent or non-violent up in East Richmond Heights or North Arlington over the month of September. Everything's been pretty much what we consider status quo. I'm not saying it's been total zero, but it hasn't nothing that will be stand out that will make you guys or girls alarmed at anything, not like that. So with that part, I'll just have to simply open it up to the MAC board first, because it's been really quiet, knock on wood.
Great, thank you. Any speakers on this item, on the presentation? Any questions, Lieutenant Buford?
I have a question.
Sure.
Lieutenant, we live on the just off of North Arlington, between Harbor View and Barth, and we have an influx of people, upwards of 10 to, sometimes even 30 people a day, who park and do what people do when they're young and have a nice view where they can park next to. And now that I'm an old man, I feel like it should be patrolled a little bit. I'm tired of coming out of my house to condoms on the ground.
I can understand. Like I say, when I look at, I got the stats right in front of me, when I'm pulling it and see calls for service and service of citizens, let's see.
Well, I think let me follow up by saying, over the past 5 years, it's really kicked up, and I'm pretty sure every neighbor and anyone who's on this call will tell you we've all called at different points and felt like there was not a response. Early on, I think there was a response, but over time, it sort of just became disheartening. So it almost feels like the people who are there are like literally daring you to do anything. Like, I dare you to call. No one's going to do anything.
No, well,
so,
I'm not that kind of a boss. So if you call, I'll send someone up there, and I'll ask people to, if you want to call my direct line, because when people call my direct line, I normally jump on the computer and I'll send a car up there, and I can give you my direct line if you like.
You want to do that now, or you want to email?
I can give it to you right now. So anybody can have it in Contra Costa County.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's do it. 510.
Okay.
262.
262.
4260. 4206. I'm sorry.
4206. Got it.
Yes. And when you call that line, I'm right at the computer and I can actually go in and have someone come up. I've done it several times.
Okay. And how many officers approximately do you have patrolling that particular area?
Well, there's only one assigned to East Richmond Heights. But in the event of call, we always like send somebody to cover that person. Depending on the call, the nature of the call, we will send more cars. But as routine patrol, you only have one car assigned.
Where generally are they coming from? Like, what's the distance they have to travel to get to this area?
That varies. They could be in El Sobrani. The particular car that's assigned there could be in El Sobrani. They could actually be in North Richmond, which is other part of Beach Forest. So if they're coming from North Richmond, you can figure travel time is going to be a little bit, especially when it's going to be doing more peak traffic hours.
Okay.
Number one more time, please.
Thank you.
I put it down in the chat. But
Okay, great. Thank you. And can I ask one more question? I know in East Richmond Heights, unincorporated county, when it comes to storing an RV at your property, are you allowed to leave an RV in your driveway if it's covered with a the type of RV cover?
I'll be honest with you, I would have to look that up, but we wouldn't be able to as the sheriff's office. We don't have the jurisdiction to go on private property for RV. That would actually be code enforcement. But I know that there are rules considering having RVs parked on property, but we wouldn't go on.
Okay.
So Victoria, the answer to that, and Joanna, we're going to come to you with your question next. But Victoria, if you have an RV, 90% of it needs to be covered. So it would need to be on the side of the home, somewhere in the backyard, and it would need to be mostly covered.
So a canvas RV cover would not be enough to cover the whole thing?
We would have code enforcement take a look at it, but from my understanding and the many calls about RVs over the years, they'd be asked to move it.
Okay.
What about RVs on the street?
Any particulars though, if there's something specific, our code enforcement officer for East Richmond Heights is Andrew Gomer. So you can, and you know what, let me, while I'm running my mouth, I will put his email down in the chat.
What are the regulations for street parking of RVs?
Well,
so they would come to, I'm sorry, I'm talking too much, go ahead.
No, street parking, that would be our jurisdiction with street parking for RVs. And we do come along and we will tag RVs for 72-hour parking. The issue has came up in the past is that getting the tow companies to actually move these RVs. So we've actually still, when it got to that, we've actually had to still go through code enforcement because there was some monies that was given over to, that was put in the fund for removal of RVs, because regular tow companies just simply don't want to take them.
Yeah. Joanna, you had a question?
Yes, this question is for the Lieutenant. Lieutenant, can you tell us, just give us some guidance when we hear explosions? In the very first issue of, well, in our last MAC meeting, we talked about how bad the last 4th of July, this 4th of July was this year, that it was the worst one. And 4th of July is come and gone, and every once in a while, we hear really loud explosions. Is there amongst all the law enforcement, do you sort of coordinate with some kind of shot spotter or something to what happens when there's an explosion somewhere? Who responds and how can people find out? Is that is that something dangerous that's happened near my house? Is there a place we can go online and find out what the explosion was? I mean, should we be calling the sheriff's office? What?
Okay, so yeah, yes, you should be calling the sheriff's office. If you hear an explosion like 4th of July, let me just say we get tons of calls on 4th of July for fireworks. But yes, if you hear loud explosions, probably some over MA-80 quarter sticks of dynamite, let me say all that stuff is illegal, and we will respond to that. The issue is, a lot of the issues is when we get in there actually locating where it's at. You can hear it, but by the time we get up there to it, we have a hard time actually locating it.
So if we call in, that kind of helps you locate it a little.
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. All right. And what's that number we should call?
925-646-8255. 2441.
2441.
But now if you feel it's an emergency, 911. Because I don't want to tell you if it's a large explosion, it's not a firework, please don't call the non-emergency number.
And that number you gave was a non-emergency number, right?
Yes, the 646 is a non-emergency number.
Okay. Eleanor, and then John Sargent.
I just wonder whether, so from where I am, these are very frequent, several times a week, and repeated in a given night, usually nighttime, not always. And I wonder if there is any interjurisdictional task force among the city and county agencies where this has been going on all year, really. It started way before July 4th and shows no signs of lessening. And I'm just wondering, recognizing the issues involved, whether there's an interagency task force dealing with it.
I'm not aware of any interagency task force that deals with fireworks. No, ma'am. That would strictly be the station house or the city of jurisdiction.
And John.
Okay. Hey, those latest explosions that we've heard recently in the evening are coming from north and east inside the Richmond city limits, and they've been posting on Nextdoor. Their shot spotter in the city of Richmond's probably picking them up, but I haven't heard any up here on the Arlington up higher. It just echoes and sounds like it's nearby, and they are really big, like M80s.
John, you said north and east?
It's in the north and east section of downtown Richmond off of Maricopa, Ream, and not far from that area down there is what I've seen.
I want to check with the neighborhood council for their.
Maybe Michelle Milan might know what's going on down there.
I will definitely check with them.
By the way, I don't have a hand raised on my Zoom. I do on others, but for some reason it's not here. So
yeah, I don't think.
Anyway,
sorry about that. Lauren.
Hi there. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, I'm looking at a post in Nextdoor about the explosions. And I did call the police, and they said to talk to Michelle Malam about it and gave me a phone number of 510-620-6546. I was told that she handles kind of the department of, because I had suggested, should we put together a community patrol to monitor this somehow, because I know the issue is locating where it's happening and having an effective response and catching the people. So I was referred to Michelle Malone. I never did call her. I don't know if that's somebody we should reach out to, and if an idea of a community patrol is a good idea.
Listening to what John said, that sounds like a city of phone number, the 620.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that's sounds like a city of Richmond number. Yes, ma'am.
So so I'm in the East Richmond Heights, and I know there's that the county versus the city. You're the sheriff's department, So, because is there coordination there?
So honestly, it's been several times that when that call goes out, you have residents that's in the city of on those blocks, along with the residents of the unincorporated area. So you might get both the city of and the sheriff's office both responding up there to try to figure out exactly where it's coming from. So it's not, but yeah, that's the best, because something that loud, we get it, and then they would get it also, because there's been several calls that we've actually both showed up, but once again, we don't have a task force.
So I have another question. Well, I guess a task force is a good idea, maybe. And then, isn't this a fire issue? Should the fire department be involved?
Yeah, well, fireworks are always, yes, ma'am, could always potentially be a fire issue.
What you'll likely hear from the fire department is that they're more of a response and not an enforcement agency in that regard. So if the fireworks lead to a fire, then they're there.
Yes, then they'll get involved.
In the apprehension of folks suspected to do this.
My last little parting comment is, obviously we're really upset about this. A lot of people I talk to in the community are really upset about it. Maybe a task force. I don't know what next steps might be, but it feels like something really needs to be done, and we're doing as we can, but is there something better we can do? And I'll just leave it with that.
I'll check, Laura. I'll check with Supervisor Joy on that. And I included Michelle Milam. I've known Michelle a very long time. She's Richmond Police Department's crime prevention manager, and I've included her phone number and email in the chat.
Now, yeah, I can check with I can't think of his name right now, but we do have county prevention guys on our side also. So I can have him look into actually the number of calls and, you know, the data regarding explosions and firework calls up in that area. He can put together, you know, something showing me exactly what we've got so far as county up there in that area with that alone.
Yeah. Any more speakers or questions, comments for Lieutenant Buford? Hey, thank you very much for being at our meeting and sharing all the information.
Yes, ma'am.
So, go ahead.
Yes, everyone have a great evening.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So, is there any public comment speakers for items not on the agenda tonight? I see John Sargent.
Did you see that Jinwei had put something in the chat?
Yeah, and I just put the phone number for illegal dumping in the chat.
Okay.
You can also email Lynn Clark for illegal dumping, and I'm putting her email address in there as well. She's our public works contact.
Okay, you want me to go
I
ahead?
don't understand what that does with the phone number to public dumping. Are we calling so that someone actually gets the stuff off the street, or are we calling to report that it's happened in the first place and we saw someone? Like, what are we doing when we call that number?
So you're calling to let the public works department know that there is illegal dumping on the street. There's a couch, there's trash. You want to give the nearest address and the nearest cross street. That's how you will report the illegal dumping. And you can do that by calling the 925-313-7000 number or emailing Lynn Clark, and her email address is in the chat. And folks can always email me about any and all of this. But I think we're on public comment. I think, Eleanor, I see your hand. And then Joanna.
I just wonder if I would be interested in the MAC learning what direction the DCD is taking in revising the general plan, as I know the last revision made considerable changes, including on lot sizes and all sorts of things. The supervisor mentioned that the plan would be done in a few months, and this group only meets every 3 months. So I'm not sure what it would mean, but I just ask if the MAC folks are interested and if there's a way to learn what's going on.
I will look into an update. So since COVID happened, a lot of the general plan additional meetings that were supposed to occur have not, and I don't know. So I will check with Mr. Kopchak and Mr. Nelson, who's been over the general plan updates, has been attending the meetings. I will ask him for the latest that East Richmond Heights had. And if we need to call a special meeting, since we're doing them via Zoom, that's not a problem for us to pull a meeting together and properly notify everyone about having a meeting if we need to discuss just that. But that's information that I can find out, Eleanor. And as I know you quite well, Eleanor, you will email me to keep me honest. So do check with me.
It was just a question for the MAC, though, you know, whether the MAC members are interested in that.
I'm interested. Plus, you know, we're gonna, if we're working on this new ordinance, we're probably gonna have a meeting on that prior to the adoption of the changes to the general plan. So we may need to have a special meeting for that item. And we can certainly concurrently have an update on any general plan changes to our area at that time.
Got it. Joanna Pace, I think you had a hand for comment.
Yeah, I think John may have been before me.
Oh, okay. Go, John.
Okay. Yeah, and Joanne, this might take me a little more than 2 minutes, but I'm going to try to make it short. So Vinay Pimple let neighbors know yesterday. He's a former Richmond City Councilman. He's running for council again. that the city of Richmond plans to shut down the fire station 66 at 41st and Clinton. And I've also found out they're planning to close Point Richmond as well. But my issue with the station at 41st and Clinton, can you guys nod your head yes or no if you know about this? Okay.
I just found out.
All right, let me just, if I can, I'll read what his statement is. The city plans to shut down our fire station on 41st and Clinton as part of its budget cuts. Please remember our firefighters don't just respond to fires. Every one of our firefighters is also an EMT, and they are the first ones to respond to 911 calls about heart attacks and massive strokes. In all of these cases, every additional minute is critical. In cases of heart attacks and massive strokes, every additional minute of reduced oxygen supply to the brain increases the chance of death or of severe permanent damage to the brain. With fires, the additional minutes make it much harder to rescue victims or save homes. Shutting down our fire station will mean that people who are now saved will die or suffer permanent damage from fires, heart attacks, massive strokes. I hope the folks here will write to their council members and speak during open forum to let the council know. They have sent out phone numbers and their emails and so on. Meanwhile, the council refuses to conduct a full audit to determine which departments can absorb budget cuts with minimum impact on services. So my issue with this is that station is our second station of response for all of East Richmond Heights. Our first station, as you probably know, is El Cerrito Station 2 up on Arlington above me. And this Station 66 has always been the second. They are the closest to all of East Richmond Heights, as well as East Richmond. And while this may, look like a City of Richmond issue, it impacts every one of us.
Yes, it does.
And if they do shut that down, my first issue is, of course, if El Cerrito engine, Station 2 is out, the next station, it's the same distance for all of them. There's one down on Carlson, the one Elsa Brandy, San Pablo Station. There's nobody near us. And, I was here when we lost our San Pablo Station 3. That's the one at the entrance to Alvarado Park. I do know that East Bay Regional Parks keeps a fire engine in there. So if we get a grass fire in Wildcat Canyon, they can go grab it if they have to. But it's an unmanned station. There's nobody there that could help us with this issue. So I just wanted to make sure that, everybody's aware of this and ask James maybe, what has John had to say about this? Does he know?
So I was just made aware of this tonight. Someone tagged me on Facebook about it. So I did not know which stations, other than to hear that there were 2 fire companies that are going to be on the city council meetings happening right now, that
right.
Richmond is discussing the closure of these fire companies. I was just made aware that there was no advance notice for us.
Okay.
I'm not sure that Supervisor Joya knows, but I will, believe me, I anticipate hearing from more residents about the closure here in Richmond. But I will check with Supervisor Joya and see if he'll have a discussion with Chief Broussard. I don't know what potential remedies there may be, but we won't know anything if we don't have the discussion. So I will speak with Supervisor Joya and ask him to speak with Chief Broussard.
Okay. And then we'll talk to him tomorrow night too.
I could hear
we'll
that.
talk to him tomorrow afternoon on the Wildcat Canyon.
Okay. I haven't looked at my calendar, but that's probably on my calendar too. I'm sorry.
Yeah, tomorrow afternoon.
I'm sorry.
I have a follow-up question. So is the Richmond City Council making a determination on that tonight, or is it just an informational item on their agenda? Do you know?
It was in the post that I was tagged on. It was something that they'll be deciding on tonight. It's how it was conveyed to me.
Wow. Okay. So we can't even send letter. I mean, it's too late to send a letter, or?
Probably yes, if they make a final decision tonight. I don't know if it's on the agenda, but I was just told that they were going to discuss it. If it's on the agenda, someone could possibly, there will be a public comment period that folks could discuss and bring up issues, but then that would probably be tonight.
I would think to close 2 fire stations like that, with the service area, there'd have to be a whole public hearing, and but I don't know. I wouldn't have heard anything if Vinay hadn't posted that for the neighbors to read.
How I found out. Okay. So I've just pulled up tonight's agenda for the city of Richmond and procedures, public comment, closed session, statement of conflict of interest, report from the city manager. It doesn't have a specific item for it, so I'm checking the consent calendar. My apologies for not doing this before the meeting.
Their agendas are very long.
Indeed.
Hard to read. Would it be appropriate for the MAC if we took a vote to send a letter? Is that an appropriate thing for the MAC to do, James?
Yes, I don't see anything wrong with it. So yes, voicing concerns of the community is exactly why the MAC exists. So if you draft a letter, we can send it to the other members for input on it, and then put it on letterhead and send it to probably the clerk. Is probably the city council clerk is probably the right place to direct the letter to, or we can send it to the mayor's office, or both. There's no limit on who we can send it to.
So and I'd like to, is there any discussion about this from MAC members on the idea of sending a letter?
I would definitely like to contest it. That this is a health and safety issue. It's like closing our local hospital.
Yep, which they've already done. So yeah, let's send it let's send it to every city. I mean, let's just.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion then that we that we send a letter to various council members for the city of Richmond and any other appropriate parties on this, on the closure of these two fire stations and how it impacts East Richmond Heights. So is there a second?
I second it.
Okay, I'll take, okay, so then I'll take the roll on that. Victoria? Yes or no?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
And I say yes, so motion passes unanimously. Would one of you want to draft the letter, send it to?
We have one more member on, Brenda Wood.
BK's here now.
Oh,
Brenda's on.
okay, Brenda, did you hear that?
Brenda, can you unmute yourself?
Sorry, I did have a question, but I also had raised my hand. I wanted to ask a question. Is there a discussion after this, or?
On the motion, or?
Yeah, I wanted to say something before you voted, but.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't even know you were here.
No,
okay, but go ahead.
I just wanted to add that in addition, you can send the letter. You probably should send it to all of the 6 council people, and I do think it's a good idea. Can you just repeat though the fire stations that are closing? Because I'm looking at the agenda and I don't actually see it on there.
The one on fire station number 66, I understand, which is on 41st and Clinton, and then I understand one in Point Richmond.
Okay, thank you. So we're writing for both or for number 66?
We want 66 to not be touched.
Right. Okay, so we're going to write, I support writing a letter on 66.
Okay, so then so motion passes unanimously then. And I'd like to know if one of the other MAC members would draft a letter to send to James or to send around. Is there a volunteer?
I'm happy to do that.
Okay, thank you, Brenda. So we'll send that to the rest of the MAC, and then we'll comment and send it back to you and then to James to send out. Or is that the right process, James?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
So the reason that I prefer to be the central point to send it out to all MAC members, I have this maybe irrational fear of violating the Brown Act. So that's why normally sending it would be fine, but if 3 of you get on the same email, then it's a Brown Act violation. So yes, please send it to me and I'll send it out to everyone.
Sure.
Elizabeth, unmute yourself. And I'm sorry, did I skip you, Joanna?
Yeah.
Go first.
Okay, thanks.
We'll get to Elizabeth.
And this is where you're asking for comments from us in general, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, so first I want to say to Jason, that number that we were given about the dumping, it actually does work. At Open Door United Methodist Church, you know, we're on Patterson Circle there in front of Adams, and we have a daily security check on our church building because we're not there daily now, and there's often been dumping on Patterson Circle, and our staffer just calls that number and it gets taken care of within 24 hours. So we're really pleased about that. Of course, what we'd really like to do is to stop the dumping to the point where Pastor Katie, on one of the last dumpings, she looked through a bag until she found a piece of mail with an address on it, and she grabbed the bag and took it to that address up on Plymouth. And she said, "Oh, this got left on my property. We're bringing it back to you." And the person was pretty mad. So we have a pretty good idea where the dumping is coming from now. And I want to know, James or MAC members, like, what do we do now? How do we get this so that this person sort of feels the heat of the law, so they, you know, not just Pastor Katie coming and giving them back the trash with a smile on her face. So that's a question I have. And then I have one other thing after that. Does anybody have suggestions for us? Like, what do we do next to, you know, like, is that a code enforcement thing?
That would be partly a code enforcement thing, but I'll give you a bit of the long and short. If you don't catch the person doing it at the moment that they're dumping it, the DA is not going to prosecute.
Okay.
And that has been, I've been with John 9 years. Every person we've ever talked to from the DA's office says the same thing.
Okay.
That illegal dumping has one of the highest thresholds for proof that, you know, kind of there's no judge that's going to take, you know, just because a person, as it was described to me, just because a person had a receipt with their name on it in the trash bag, it most likely came from their property, but the judge will not say for certain unless you know that this person placed it there. So that's a bit of the issue that we run into with illegal dumping. Now, for large folks pushing piles of construction, if you're not caught in the moment doing it, you know, the county's kind of in just the business of cleaning up, unfortunately.
Does the DA take filmed evidence, like it's caught on a security camera and you can see the license plate or something like that?
Yes, they would take that. But some of that same sort of threshold, who's driving the car? So you got the plate and the vehicle being pushed out. Who was driving the car at the time? We know that list is probably very short, you know, given the registration will have someone's name, but for whatever reason, the court system, the DAs have tried. There's a history of trying and it being unsuccessful.
Okay.
So you need the person's face, the vehicle. The city of Richmond did a sting 3 or 4 years ago that was in the Richmond Standard. They had their code enforcement. They had the DA assigned to the code enforcement unit. They witnessed a couple and no prosecution except for on one of them. And just as a side note, it's incredibly expensive to have all those folks out at 2 in the morning from midnight to 3, 4 in the morning. Yeah. So it's, you know, if they're reasonably certain there's someone who's habitually dumping in the same area, the neighbors have identified a vehicle, okay, they may put an operation together to go out and catch this individual. Okay. Short of that, you know, a lot of this is just response trying to get it on the list to make sure that the dumps are picked up.
All right.
I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but to tell you I'd look into it when I kind of know, you know, being honest about that.
Okay. Well, in the meantime,
call it in though, please.
Kudos to the people at the county who come and pick it up when we call. So, and then the other thing I want to mention is that Open Door is putting out this little newsletter called Neighborhood Updates. We put out 3 issues now, and we hand delivered 60 copies in June and 100 copies in September and 130 copies in this month in October, and we'll put out an issue in November. And so if anybody would like to be a distributor and be the person who hands it out to your neighbors, call or email the church office, and we'll give you a route, and that can help you keep your neighbors informed of things. it's different than, you know, next door. It's a little more, you know, folksy. And but anyway, we've been getting good feedback from neighbors about that. I'm just curious, here on the screen, did anybody get this on their doorstep? Doesn't look like one. Okay, well, we'll try to get it to more. But we advertise this meeting in 2 of the issues, so we hope it's helping with the attendance. So
Thank you for doing that.
Elizabeth was next.
And we are doing a food drive on Halloween. It's a drive-by food drive for the Richmond Food Pantry. And we're also going to have a Day of the Dead altar if you want to put something on the altar about a deceased loved one, right there at 6226 Arlington.
Elizabeth was next for public comment.
Yeah. Can I go back to the fire station issue?
Yes, ma'am.
This is more of a question, but it seems to, when we had the county fire chief last meeting, he talked about the fact that all of these fire stations are, and all of these cities are operating under mutual support agreements, including San Pablo and El Cerrito. And that's how we get supported after our fire station that used to be at Alvarado Park moved, you know, 5 miles away. My question is, shouldn't the county be going, this is not Richmond's decision alone to make. Shouldn't the county be kind of informed and going to bat for us at this point?
I mean, I can respond to that. I've been monitoring some of your comments while I'm on Pinole. So, you know, the largest fire district in the county is the Contra Costa County Consolidated Fire District, of which the Board of Supervisors is the board. And there's 2 fire stations in West County, San Pablo and El Sobrante. Fire operates on a system of auto aid, meaning when you call 911, if you live, for example, in East Richmond, your fire call goes to the fire dispatch center at Consolidated Fire, and they dispatch medical and fire, because about 80% of the calls into fire are usually medical calls. So they will dispatch appropriately. If the closest fire station is in El Cerrito, Kensington, or Richmond, and they're available, they are dispatched. So it operates as one seamless system. So if Richmond closes a station, it does have impacts, right, in other areas because they may have less resources available. The county or El Cerrito, which is the other fire agency in the area, do not have an ability to tell Richmond that they must keep it open. We don't have that. It's up to their city council with their budget considerations. It is true, if Richmond closes fire stations, it affects all of West County, just like if we were to close a fire station, it would impact Richmond because it operates much as similar to one system. So less fire resources in any one agency impacts other agencies as well.
So can I ask John, you're the best politician in the whole group that's here. So how do we make our voices heard? And I mean,
yeah, I think obviously the Richmond City Council is going to care most about what residents of Richmond feel, what voters in Richmond feel. And I can tell you, I'm sure a lot of Richmond residents are weighing in about this same issue. I can express it as well, but ultimately the council is going to make a decision, probably right, based upon what the voters of Richmond feel, what pressures they're getting, their budget. So talking to your and our friends in Richmond to weigh in, and I know a lot are, is probably the most effective thing to do. And I think I'm glad to have a discussion with Richmond and our own fire department, which works with Richmond. I'm sure can express what impact it would have for all of us in the region. less fire resources, and let me give you an example of how it all affects, Measure X, which is on the ballot, and I'll put a plug in for Measure X, which is a countywide sales tax, the first one we've ever had, would cover health, social services, and certain fire, and let me tell you where. In East Contra Costa County, which is a separate fire district, they had to close 3 fire stations, and that means our fire district, Con Fire, has had to respond more. So it affects us when another fire district cuts their resources and measures to try to equalize fire in this county are important because it helps all of us.
Supervisor Joy, I don't know if you were at the Pinole Council meeting, but the MAC did vote to send a letter to Richmond City Council members.
I heard that, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think, so the MAC can't take positions on like candidates and political issues, but it can take a position on something that may impact your neighborhood, direct services, which is normally the county, right? In this case, you're saying that the decrease in services of Richmond will impact East Richmond, and that's fine to write. Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment speakers, James?
I'm sorry, I don't see anyone. No.
Okay, thank you. So then we can go back to presentations. One presentation by Supervisor Joya on the county update.
James, can you give it? I'm monitoring Pinole and have to say something here in Pinole because we're wrapping this up in Pinole. So I can add to James after he gives an update.
Okay.
So a lot of the things that I really want to cover, some of them are addressed in the minutes that I sent out. And one of the big things that I want to continue to encourage everyone, continue wearing your mask. If you have not been tested, please go get tested. The county, based on what the health director said this morning, and Aral said that we are trending in the right direction to move from our current zone to the next lower zone, which would allow more services to be open. And this is at a time where across the country, cases are surging in other places and we're still on the decrease. So everyone is doing the right thing. We just need to continue to do it. We need to continue to do it longer. I'm sorry, I didn't have my notes up. Other things to keep in mind, hopefully everyone here is registered to vote. If you have not done so, or if you're having an issue with voting, please email me and I can get you connected with the clerk's office. We want to make sure that everyone that wants to and has a desire to vote has the ability to do so. And I also want to take the time right now to address Mr. Sergeant. John brought up an issue about, what's the road, John? Is it Kensington Avenue?
It's the end of Kensington Avenue.
So would you discuss a little bit about that? Has Public Works, you've spoken with Public Works, can you give a little bit of an update on that?
Yeah, so when you're going south on Kensington, which is the street running along all the dead-end streets up here on the south end of East Richmond Heights, Kensington makes a right where it stops where a landslide happened many, many years back in the 60s, I think it was. But there's always been a public path from there going through to Arlington Boulevard. In fact, John Joya and I both walked through there several years ago because it was very overgrown. And after we went through there, everything got cleared out. It was back to a walk-through public path. And then last year, we discovered that there were piles and piles of trash in bags that was blocking the path again. And after I talked to James, that miraculously got cleared up. So that path has been open since I was a little kid. And we know that you can't drive through it. It's been a pedestrian path. But a homeowner a couple of months ago put a fence all the way across it, blocking it completely. And the issue that I and several other neighbors have is that is the only fire escape from all of those dead-end streets in that area, from where Kensington splits off and Richmond Avenue starts, which runs up to Del Monte. And if we had a wildfire out of control or a disaster up here, and on the north end, it closed Richmond Avenue or Aqua Vista, which is the only escape to the south, and to the north, if it blocked Olive on the way down of Kensington towards Bernhard, there is no way for blocks of the residents back there on the dead-end streets and the portion of Kensington and the portion of Richmond for them to get out at all now. There is no way for them to leave if we have a disaster that happens up here and the streets are blocked at both ends. So I spoke to James about it. It was referred to, it was Andrew Gomer's department, but they have another guy looking at it. His name is Sean. And they looked at the assessor's map, which you can go to online, and the assessor shows it's actually still a street and it's open. There's no property lines on the assessor's map that area should have been blocked off. So the last thing I got from Sean a couple days ago was he said when my boss gets back this week, he was going to turn it over to him and let him make a determination. So it's in that that department right now that are investigating what to do. But from what I can see, and he agreed. He says I can see that that's a county easement. It's county property. It does not belong to anyone who owns the homes up there, and it should not be fenced off. So that was really the only concern. And I've been up here 60 years this month, as a matter of fact. Mm-hmm. And that it just when I saw that happened, and I don't know that I purposely did not put it on Nextdoor because I didn't want to rile up a bunch of people in the neighborhood. I thought maybe let's let the county proceed and make a determination, then we'll see where it goes from there. So just waiting for that department to come back and see what they decide.
John, can you tell us the nearest address? Because on the assessor's map, it's easiest to find things if you have a specific address.
Yes.
What is the address we've been using? I know. I'm trying to. Let's see.
It's the last house on Kensington Avenue, which is way back up there. The last house is on the property where the landslide came down on the road. I want to say 6635
Kensington Avenue.
Okay, that's the last house.
Okay, good. That's all I needed.
The person who built the fence actually lives up on a different street on Aqua Vista Court, and the house is for sale. And whoever that person is, they're the ones that put the fence and literally just took all of that land down there. And if they did it legally, well, that's fine. But I'd sure like to know who when there's property changes like that up here, I always get a notice in the mail. If a neighbor has got something changing like that. So that's what the situation is. And then the other side is actually, it's a driveway off Arlington Boulevard, but it covers two houses that are in there, in that area. And the other, one other little point is that path also, by being blocked, now cuts the people who used to need to go over to Barrett Avenue and take the 7 bus, because it's the only bus up here now. You go through the path, and then you turn down Claremont, make a left, and there's another public path that goes through to La Honda, and La Honda in one block on La Honda and Barrett is the 7 bus stop. So people have been cut off from, public transportation. Of course, now we have Uber and stuff like that, but, people who needed to go on the 7 bus down to BART or to Berkeley, now they got to go all the way around, one way of this giant block that I live in here in the middle.
So typically my report and update doesn't include the county portion. It'll include specific things going on if I know that there are things going on, and I know that has been very important to Mr. Sargent for quite some time. We talked about at a meeting early last year, maybe in January or at the end of last year, East Bay Mud and the pumping station, since we've been talking about fires. Charlotte Sullivan, who is our rep, she will be at our meeting in January. She just got off maternity leave. So we will have a report from our fire chief likely that was at our last meeting. He will likely be presenting in January along with Charla, who will have an update on East Bay Mud. But I mentioned both of those. I can kind of guess the questions folks may have for the fire department, but if you have questions about East Bay Mud, if you have questions about the West County Wastewater District, you know, those are agencies, special districts that respond to residents in East Richmond Heights. They provide services. So, you know, we can have them come speak. We can have one of the board members. Harry Weiner is an El Sobrante resident, but he does represent the West County Wastewater District Board. And Joanna was kind enough to partner him with me. It's interesting because I've been seeing him at the El Sobrante MAC meeting for a number of years. And it would have been easy to partner him with East Richmond Heights. So we plan to do that for the upcoming year. But at this time, this part of my update and all of the meetings, I like to just sort of open the floor for questions. People have questions for me about county things you want me to look into. I'm happy to do that. And John, go right ahead.
Yeah, and I promise this is the end, but I thank you for bringing up East Bay Mud, because my question remains, and I'd like it in the record here, that if we have a wildfire up here, we know that our sole source of water through all of East Richmond Heights is the tank up at the top of Del Monte and Richmond Avenue on the golf course. And the pumping station is down on Carquinez Avenue. There is still no generator at the pumping station. And so the question is for East Bay Mud, should we have a wildfire up here and PG&E is cut off for whatever reason, public safety, you know, power shut off, how long will it take for them to get a generator into that pumping station and hooked up so that we do not run out of water for our fire hydrants?
We brought this up many meetings now.
Yeah.
8 months ago. I live like Claremont. My girlfriend lives right near that pumping station, and there's no way the water's going to go uphill.
Right. So as of now, it appears they don't have generators connected for the pumping stations. They've said that they're going to. I believe that they're going to. But you bringing it up allows me an opportunity to email them to find out where we are with that, because they did say they're going to do it. That was a comment made at one of the MAC meetings, probably in 2018, if I'm being, or maybe our October meeting in 2018. Charla, in fact, was at that meeting, and you brought it up, and it's been on their to-do list. So I will email her leading up to the meeting in January, but I'll ask her in an email tonight, and if we know sooner, I'll just email everybody. Other questions for me?
I was just going to say most work orders, based on my experience working for different companies, has a time limit. So it has some kind of a time frame in which to do the project, if you could find out what it is.
Will do.
And what's the date of our next meeting?
That was the last bit of things we needed to do before our meeting, and it was select our 4 meeting dates for 2020. What is next year? 2021. I was going to say that for that. We can do that. We can do that now, though.
No, I've lost track because I was there our last meeting. It was on a Thursday, and this one's on a Tuesday. I've lost track of what our typical day is.
So we usually do January, April, July, and October. I think those are our 4 months. And we usually try to keep them on a Tuesday. Tuesday was the one day that worked best. And in particular, I believe it's the second Tuesday that we've tried to have them on.
I think
or we can do third
Tuesday. I have a every month.
Can't hear you.
I couldn't hear you, Victoria.
I said the second Tuesday of each month I have a commitment with Optimus.
Okay, we can do.
I do have a meeting on the second Tuesdays too, so that wouldn't be good for me.
So third Tuesday?
That's fine.
Uh-huh.
6:30. The time will always be 6:30 unless folks want to change that.
Okay.
But
Tuesday
third
sounds
Tuesday?
good. Yeah.
Okay, so give me just a second so I can look it up. I want to put the meeting dates out there before we get done.
I'm sorry. A lot has happened since our last meeting. I actually take care of my 95-year-old mother who lives in San Francisco, which is why I couldn't quite be here. So that's going to be an every Tuesday issue. Is Wednesday an option? I know we've had meetings on different days, but Tuesday is kind of a challenging one for me.
So,
and that's every Tuesday. So not once a month, but every Tuesday.
You know, we can do, you know, really any day of the week that will work. Second Wednesday won't work. El Sobrani MAC meets on second Wednesday. But we can do third Wednesday. We could do first Wednesday, Thursdays.
Wednesday's good. Third Wednesday's good for me.
Third Wednesday, I could do that.
Third Wednesday of January. What is it? What's the date?
Third Wednesday in January is the 20th.
20th.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
So that would be January 20th.
Mm-hmm.
And then April 21st.
April 21st.
July 21st.
Okay.
And October 20th. So
super.
Those are our 4 meeting dates for 2020.
Let me tell you something. The school board meetings, I just want to see if it conflicts.
And I have a conflict on April 21st, but you know, I bet we'll be still in COVID country and that will go away. So I will be here instead of someplace else. So I doubt that right now it looks like it's a conflict, but I really have questions about whether it will actually happen or not. So I think it's good to leave it.
Yeah,
and as we get closer to it, we can definitely change it as long as we give folks adequate notice. If someone knows, you know, a month out that, you know, April 21st is not going to work, that's enough time for us to, you know, give a month for me to send the change out through the distribution list so everyone has plenty of time to know. So if any of those dates don't work, the sooner you let me know that they don't work, the more notice we can give to the MAC and to our residents.
What's the October date? Was that 20th?
Yeah, Wednesday, October 20th.
Okay, thank you.
2021. If there are no more questions from me, I can stop talking.
Okay, so the next item then is information items. Does anyone have any information items they'd like to add? Okay.
Joanne?
Yes.
I have one thing. In the newsletter, we published an offer from the Boy Scouts that if there are residents who need help clearing brush on their property, there's a Boy Scout troop that has volunteered to come do it for free. I assume it's all, you know, masked and COVID appropriate. But Kate Roush, who works with James, is the person in John Joya's office who's heading that up. And I contacted her and she said no one has taken them up on the offer and they're eager to come and work on somebody's property and clear brush. So Kate Roush in James's office is the person to contact. And then maybe you have a neighbor whose property is a big fire hazard, but you know they have sort of financial difficulties. This would be a great way to kind of, you know, take care of it.
And do make kind of an assessment. These are young, you know, kind of young men. So if there's 11 feet of brush overgrowing it looks like the house from Jumanji, probably not them. But if there are, you know, some other things that they can remove with some hand tools, that's probably a little bit more in their ballpark versus needing a bobcat and things like that to clean up a house.
That's a wonderful offer, and I hope we get some takers on that for our youth too. That's great. Thank you.
Joanne, the only other thing I want to mention is the polling place will be opened at Open Door in the Friendship Hall downstairs. It'll be socially distanced. It'll depend on the poll captain whether the polling places, whether we have some outside, and I assume it'll depend on the weather. But there is a big tent there right now because Crestmont School is back in session. So, but the poll will be open from 6 to 8. Where the delivery has been scheduled, and so we'll be there.
Great. Okay, so next on the agenda are subcommittee reports, and I see the agenda says that there are none. Announcements, we still have 2 vacancies on the East Richmond Heights MAC.
We've got one application in for one of the seats, and I'll be setting that meeting, that interview up with Supervisor Joya. I'm going to put the link to the page where you will apply down in the chat right now.
Okay, I would like to apply for it, but how do I do it?
Okay, so if you can view the chat, I just included the link. It'll take you to a page.
Okay.
When you get to that page, you'll see a section that says how to apply.
Okay, so it's not too late to apply?
Nope, there's no time limit on it. It's vacant until it's filled.
Okay, wonderful, thank you. If we have a little time, I have a couple questions. I wonder if, I know it's not on the agenda, it's just something I just wonder if we have a little time to talk about it. If not, I can ask later.
You can ask now. Are there any objections?
Yeah.
Go ahead, ask.
So I got people told me that we're gonna have a big, so City of Richmond is doing some letters sent out to the residents regarding, they're going to repair the sewage. So there will be a huge tax increase of that. There was a public hearing was supposed to going on in April, and I don't know what happened to it because of a pandemic. So I just wonder, do we get anything to say about that, or is that a tax increase going to impact us, or is that something we should be aware of?
So was that about Adams School? I caught.
No, that's a different thing. That's 2 questions. The one question is about the property tax increase regarding the sewage repair.
So that's a City of Richmond issue. The MAC covers only the unincorporated area of Richmond, unincorporated area of the county.
But do we use their sewage or don't?
No, that if you live in the unincorporated area, the tax does not affect you. If you live in the City of Richmond, the tax affects you. There
Got it.
Richmond Neighborhood Council, but if you're in the unincorporated area, you're in the county and you are in, I think, the West County Wastewater District, so it would not affect that. That Richmond tax is only in Richmond.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for clear that. And another thing is, if there's any proposal from district regarding the Adams site, do we have anything to say about it? Because it's a school district thing, and as a MAC, we can't have input. I'm just curious about that.
So the MAC is advisory to the Board of Supervisors and the county.
Mm-hmm.
The Adams School is located in the unincorporated area, which means it is subject to zoning and planning for from the county. And what permits would be required depends on the kind of project that would be proposed. If, for example, if the school district wanted to come in and turn Adams into a housing development, they would need a zoning approval, and they would need a land use permit from the county, and there would be an EIR or environmental review, and the MAC could weigh in and make recommendations, and ultimately it's up to the county planning department, planning commission, and board of supervisors, but the MAC could weigh in. If the school wanted to reopen a school there, depending what they were doing, that may be exempt from a county land use permit under state law because it's a school site. So it depends what the project is. Our public works department would still weigh in and say, well, you need to make certain changes to handle traffic flow or drop off. So the bottom line is anything that happens there, the MAC could weigh in to the county on that issue. And we would keep an eye on it and be watching that when there were previous proposals there. I'm unaware of any proposals there now.
Okay, Great. Thank you so much for answering my question.
Sure.
Okay, so the next item are agenda items and speakers for the upcoming meetings. And I think one, we have the general plan update presentation, and of course, recommendation on the view ordinance. So are there any other suggestions for speakers for upcoming MAC meeting or agenda items that need to be covered?
Oh, I have one more question. I'm sorry to just one thing in my mind. So since the Measure R passed, so we have a kind of this school bond, and does the MAC have any right to give input on how the school district spend the school bond, since it's collected by property tax anyway?
Not more than an individual would have that lives in the school district. There's no.
Okay. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Okay, so we need to go back to the approval of the minutes of August 13, 2020. Has all the MAC members had a chance to review those?
Yep, I make a motion that we approve the minutes.
Is there a second? I'll second it. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Brenda? Did I hear Brenda?
No, I have to abstain. I wasn't at that meeting, so.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so motion passes 3 yes, 1 abstention. Okay, so I think we're at the end of our agenda. Good meeting. Does anyone want to make a motion for adjournment?
I move to adjourn.
Second? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Very kindly. Take care, everyone. Have a good night and stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Thank you, James.
Thank you.
Thank you.